You know that moment when a single sentence slices through you like a dull knife, twisting just enough to leave a scar that never quite heals? That's how it started for Lon Nguyen. Standing there in the fluorescent-lit conference room of Apex Dynamics, a mid-sized tech firm in downtown Seattle. The air was thick with the hum of the projector and the faint scent of stale coffee from the Keurig that no one ever cleaned. Mark Harlan, the self-proclaimed visionary lead in product strategy, didn't even bother glancing up from his tablet. "You don't belong in strategy meetings," he muttered, flicking his wrist toward the door as if shooing away a stray fly. Lon froze, her hands still gripping the stack of vendor reports she'd compiled overnight. The ones with the highlighted risk assessments that could save the entire Q3 rollout from imploding. The room went silent, awkward coughs from the team. Averted eyes from her boss, Kevin, who suddenly found the grain of the oak table fascinating. No one spoke up. Not a word. So Lon did what she'd learned from years of biting her tongue. She forced a tight smile, pivoted on her sensible black flats, and walked out. But not before discreetly pulling out her phone, capturing a quick photo of the whiteboard she'd just annotated with supply chain contingencies, and tucking those reports under her arm like hidden ammunition. That night, in her cramped one-bedroom apartment overlooking the Puget Sound, rain pattering against the window like unspoken regrets, Lon sat cross-legged on her thrift store couch, a half-eaten pho takeout bowl cooling beside her. The sting from Mark's words hadn't faded. It simmered, turning into something sharper, more deliberate. She wasn't rewriting his half-baked plan out of spite, not yet. This was survival. Mark's strategy was all flair, buzzwords like synergistic scaling and timelines pulled from thin air, ignoring the real bottlenecks in procurement and logistics. Lon had watched him dismiss her initial input with a grunt, as if her 8 years in operations meant nothing because she didn't have the flashy title or the golf buddies in upper management. So she built her own version. Not for glory, but for the ops team who'd bear the brunt when his castle of cards collapsed. She titled the document Apex Q3 Contingency Framework, L. Nguyen Draft, embedding every calculation, every flagged delay, every buffer zone drawn from actual vendor histories. And yes, she watermarked it subtly with her initials in the footer, because she'd seen too many ideas vanish into the ether, repackaged by louder voices. Before logging off at 2:17 a.m., eyes burning from the screen's glow, Lon drafted an email in her work account, not sent, just scheduled for HR at dawn. Subject: Internal Ops Backup Plan, Contingency Only. Attached, the full file. Time-stamped to the second. It wasn't a bomb, it was insurance. The kind you tuck away for rainy days that turn into storms. Quiet. Unassuming. But ironclad. The next morning, she strode into the office as if the humiliation hadn't happened. Her bob haircut neatly pinned, coffee mug in hand. Mark's voice boomed from the adjacent war room, tossing around phrases like disruptive innovation that made Lan's stomach churn. Kevin passed her in the hall with a weak nod, as if that erased his silence the day before. She returned it with a neutral, "Good morning," her mind already mapping the cracks in Mark's facade. Anger hadn't fully ignited yet, it was a low burn, steady and patient. Mark had revealed the game. Speak loud. Take credit. Let the invisible ones clean up the mess. But he underestimated her, assuming she'd fold like so many before. By midweek, his plan was unraveling, deadlines accelerating without headcount increases, suppliers ghosting calls because contracts weren't locked. It wasn't just incompetence, it was arrogance. A performance for the execs who valued charisma over competence. Lon didn't rant, she refined. Her shadow framework grew, no glossy slides, just raw data from past audits. Color-coded risk levels, yellow for minor hiccups, red for potential disasters. She modeled volatility curves, factoring in real-world variables like shipping strikes or material shortages, things Mark treated as footnotes. At 10:45 p.m. that Wednesday, alone in the dim office after everyone had left, Lon added the final touches, mitigation strategies, tiered vendor responses. She didn't proofread obsessively. This was visceral, born from the ache of being sidelined. She toggled on version tracking, embedding her creation timestamp like a digital fingerprint. Mark had once scoffed at metadata in a team huddle, calling it nerd stuff for the back office. Lon smiled faintly at the memory. People like him always underestimate the quiet weapons. The file dispatched to HR at 6:09 a.m., slipping into the archive unnoticed, unflagged. It didn't need fanfare, it needed existence. Proof etched in the system. By Thursday, Mark paraded through the open plan floor, slapping a mood board from creative onto Lan's desk with a grin. Fuel for the fire, he said, as if stock photos of soaring eagles could fix a logistics nightmare. Lon nodded politely, flipping it over to scribble a note. Eagles don't haul freight. After hours, she lingered, cross-referencing vendor logs, pinpointing the weak links, the ones likely to buckle under Mark's aggressive timelines. She added it to her framework. Phase 2. Surge volatility. Boring? Yes. Essential? Absolutely. Being invisible had its perks. No one questioned the woman burning midnight oil, assuming she was just dedicated or perhaps compensating for something unspoken. Lon leaned into the stereotype, letting them underestimate while she fortified her position. The cracks widened by the following week. In sync meetings, suppliers flagged delays. Phoenix-based vendor C couldn't meet the rush without overtime premiums Mark hadn't budgeted. Logistics emailed a reality check with Mark's Gantt chart annotated in red question marks. He didn't adapt, he improvised, barking orders like cut QA rounds for speed, sending a ripple of unease through the room. No one pushed back openly, but Lon felt the shifts, sidelong glances her way, subtle acknowledgments that her work was the lifeline. Then it began, the underground circulation. Kevin slipped a printout of her vendor tiers under his notepad during a review. Sarah from warehouse forwarded the risk model anonymously. Saw this, useful? Jamal in procurement mirrored her spreadsheets, tweaking them quietly. They didn't credit her aloud, but they used it because it worked, propping up Mark's chaos from the shadows. Mark remained oblivious, obsessing over Slack threads about rollout visuals while his plan hemorrhaged. Lon watched from her cubicle, updating her logs, the tension coiling tighter in her chest like a spring ready to snap. The breaking point hit when a key deadline slipped by 48 hours, a locked verbal agreement from a rep on vacation. And signed. Mark spun it as a hiccup, but Lon passed a discreet copy of her contingency table to Kevin under the table. By next day, procurement had rerouted. No thanks came. But Lon saw her timelines in print trays, her diagrams folded into notebooks, even her file name peeking from a vendor presentation, Apex Q3_Elngwin_V4. It stung, the validation mixed with theft, but she logged it all, building her case. Credit wasn't the endgame, accountability was. The confrontation crept in like fog over the sound. Mark leaned into her cubicle one afternoon. All false camaraderie, hey. Got those old op sketches you were tinkering with? Loved some phrasing, could polish my narrative. He chuckled, as if her late-night labor was a hobby. Lon met his eyes coolly. Might have. What specifically? He waved it off. No rush. Just ping me. She didn't. Logs showed his assistant had accessed the archive days prior, clumsy, traceable. By Monday, a final draft circulated. Q3 launch, Mark Harlan final. But it was hers, lifted paragraphs. Identical matrices. Even the watermark faint under graphs. The clarity hit Lon like ice water. This was his playbook. Curating others' work as his own. Her stomach nodded, but rage sharpened into precision. The email surfaced Wednesday, glimpsed on Kevin's screen as Lon passed. FWD, Strategy Metadata Review, confidential. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured tea. Knowing someone had exposed the trail, version history. Timestamps. All leading back to her original. By Thursday, the office air turned brittle. HR called Mark in for a routine sync. Folder thick with tabs. Legal emailed department heads, review of Q3 materials, forward originals. Buried in HR's logs, lands insurance file. Predating Mark's by weeks. Metadata roared where voices had whispered. They didn't loop her in immediately, protocol. Confirmation first. Mark name-dropped her in a stand-up, lands been key on logistics, Real team player. The condescension crawled under her skin. But she smiled silently, her file spoke louder. The invite pinged, board review, attribution. No frills. Executive suite. Kevin dropped a folder at her desk. Bring originals. You'll be okay. Inside, her metadata prints. Edit logs. Email receipts, his silent amends for past cowardice. Lon wore her old navy blazer. Frayed but familiar. And walked the echoing hall like entering a battlefield. The room was sterile, board members. Legal. Auditor. CFO. And Mark, disheveled. Smirk faltering. She sat opposite him. Folder ready. The VP started. Clarify authorship on Q3 strategy. Mark jumped. Collaborative. Lon contributed. Lon cut and evenly. I was excluded. She laid out evidence like dominoes. Metadata sheet. Version timeline. HR submission. Email log, all predating his. The room hushed. A board member muttered. Unbelievable. Mark stammered. Curation. Not claim. The lead board member, Brent, out. He left. Papers trembling. No fanfare followed. But the reverence lingered. 3 days later. HR offered, Director of Strategic Ops, retroactive credit. Exec bonuses. Full visibility. Lon paused. My team joins all sessions, no more shadows. Agreed. The memo went out. Lon and Gwyn leads Q3 success. Mark's name erased from records. Org chart scrubbed. She updated her signature. Hosted Q4 kickoff with her full team invited. At the table. Spotting a hesitant new hire. Lon pulled out a chair. If you've got sharp ideas. Sit. The room wasn't for the loud anymore, it was for the resilient. The once silenced now heard.